could I start this one? If that's okay with
Sure,
Rudy?
yeah.
Yeah. So I don't even like when I mention like the things like, oh, like, the initial creation of Israel is immoral, and like they did this to that, and I don't. Me personally, I describe myself as a humanist. So when I see something like this happen, like let's say a Palestinian mistreating an Israeli, or an Israeli mistreating a Palestinian, I see it as it's something that hurts me on both ends. I have no joy in seeing like Palestinians being oppressed. Neither do I see, neither does the idea of Israelis being oppressed ring a bell to me. And I see it as something like a failing on both of our sides, that we can learn from the mistakes of the past and use, both of us can learn from it and use it as a platform to um, fix the future or mold the future in a way of our liking. I don't. It's like, in the end of the day, I'm not trying to see like who did like have an oppression Olympics on who did like who suffered the most, who had the most killed, who did like who like outmaneuvered the other. Like, it's not, to me, that's not something that's very relevant. It's not something that's productive. And in the end of the day, the people with the person with their side is going to be happy with whatever the result comes with. And so, yeah, like I think an important part is saying that it's not this is not a failure. This is not a failure of Israelis or Jews, or a failure of Palestinians, but it's a failure of humanity. And it's humans were the ones that failed, and we're all humans. That's something that we can all connect to. And like learning from the mistakes of Israelis, like as a Palestinian, and learning like an Israeli learning from the mistakes of Palestinians is something that we can all use to better understand, and build a better platform to like encourage a more communication between us.
I absolutely agree. I kind of like thought about three things while you were talking. You know, a lot of people come and tell me, especially those that are older generation, whether they're supportive of one side or the other, or from one community or another, and they tell me, but do you really think that we can create a solution? But do you really think that we can fix things? But do you really think, with all the hate that exists, with all the things that have happened, do you really think that you can? And when you look at other conflicts and ethnic situations around the world, you know, like Germany and France that were fighting wars for 100 years. Today, Germans and French people don't have issues unless they're playing soccer together. You know, you look at the situation with, like, let's say Nazi Germany, right? A civilization that was set out to exterminate. Of course, there might be individuals in that civilization that were good, but for the most part, the control of that civilization was to exterminate the Jews. A decade later, after the Shoah, they were paying reparations to a Jewish state. You know, who would have thought? Who would have thought that that could change a generation, could change, and things can be a different structure. So the idea that we can't change the systemic problems that exist, the injustices that exist, the suffering that exists, the inequality that exists, the inability to connect on the human level and to create something that works, this idea that we can't is, I think, the reason why we can't, because we think that we can't. And this, I started thinking like this. You know, there are many, I think, sort of eureka moments, but I remember one when I went to an APAC conference in DC, and I usually go outside to the protesters and speak and have conversations with everyone. And this was like a particular year where there was a lot of like, you know, very polarized individuals on both sides. And I looked kind of like down the middle of where there was a space, and I looked on one side, all the Palestinians with their flags and chanting, and then I looked on the side, and there were all the Israelis with their flags and chanting, and they were speaking at each other, and like they didn't even hear what each other were saying. They just needed to take out all the anger and all the pain and everything that was bottled up out on the other. And I looked at both sides, and I'm like, do you both realize that actually need to come together to build that and invest energy that you both had in actually creating something? Then we'd actually be able to have that reality if we invested all this energy instead of fighting each other to come together and build that. And that's what made me start thinking a little bit differently into what are the players and what are they doing in order to put us apart. So you asked, do you think there needs to be reconciliation? For example, I think it's very important for a Nakba Day to exist, because there was a lot of suffering that happened with this commemoration of the Nakba. I particularly think it might need to not be on May 15th, because May 15th represents the day that the Jews had sovereignty from the British. So, in my opinion, those who chose May 15th did an error, because it makes it seem as we're celebrating the fact that Jews had independence and autonomy, or had control and took out the British. When that's not at all what people think when they, commemorate the Nakba. And when they think of the Nakba, they think of all the people that lost their lives, all the people that lost their homes, and there should be a day for that. And I think that if we actually try to understand what we mean, the bottom line, and communicate with one another and try to build from there, that we'd maybe be able to get there.